welcome to another edition of Tuscaloosa Talks. I'm honored to have Gene Poole here, a Tuscaloosa legend. But Gene, before we jump in, and maybe the last time I call you Gene in this interview, you go by Poogie. All right, how'd you get that nickname?
So my name is like Alfred Eugene, and my sister was older than me, and I hated that, and she and her friend came up with Poogie. So from the time I was about maybe 2 or 3 years old, it stuck. And when I graduated from high school, Mr. Greer was the principal, and you would have gone across, as William Walter Maddox or something, and I went across as Poogie Poole. And he said, if I'd have called you Alfred Eugene, nobody would have known who you were. So it stuck like glue.
So you've had it for, I didn't realize it was that long that you've carried this nickname.
Yeah, some people think it's my wife's sweet name or something, but it's not. My sister tagged me 75 years ago.
Well, and Poogie, you have such a great reputation. The philanthropy of your family, of Hudson Poole overall, is legendary in our community. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later on, but something I do want to talk to you about more serious. You were in Israel on October 7th when Hamas launched their war against Israel. You were in the middle of it. What was it like? I know that's a very broad question. It's the morning of October 7th. What'd you experience?
So I'm getting chills as you're talking about it. We have many friends in Tel Aviv due to the diamond business, the jewelry business, and so we've been talking about this trip for a year. They were absolutely saying how peaceful and wonderful things were in Israel, and we were looking so forward to it. We had no clue that we would have a problem. But that morning, Jamie and I went down to breakfast, and Emily came down and said, did y'all hear the bombs? And we said, what? And so then we left and went up, and we were about 35 miles from the Gaza Strip in Bethlehem at that point, and we could hear them, and we could see the smoke plumes from it. So we knew something was going on, and we didn't have a Fox over there. We had a little bit of a CNN, but not much. Anyway, being a military guy, I figured it was going to be a skirmish. Israelis, being as good as they are, would stuff it really quick and it'd be over. And then I did get some news that Hamas had shot 2,000 missiles, and I thought, well, this isn't a skirmish. We actually had a guide that a lot of people in Tuscaloosa know. The Remmert family that goes over there uses George, and he was phenomenal. He is a Israeli and born and raised there, and speaks 5 or 6 languages. Anyway, he got in touch with some military and police to kind of make sure we were going to be safe. So we felt.
Because you were in the West Bank at the time, right?
Yeah, in Bethlehem.
Okay.
And now the Bethlehem, most people don't know, it's a walled city, and Israel shut it down when the war started. And so we couldn't leave Bethlehem. And George, going back to him, he was able to get in contact with some military and some police. And the next day on a Sunday, we were able to get out of Bethlehem and get into Jerusalem. So still we're kind of thinking, well, we're not leaving till next Thursday, and, this is not right here on us. And so we still tour a little bit and look at some great things. And the 4 or 5 days before the war started, we had a tremendous trip. So on the Monday, we were at the Wailing Wall, which is, of course, one of the most historic sites there. And a missile went over the Wailing Wall, and they herded us into some buildings and made us stay in there. And a Patriot missile took that missile out. So when we came back out of there, we were traveling with 2 other couples. We said, hey, we need to exit. So George started a plan as to what we could do. I want to mention this. We had Jamie Duffy in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Canceling and getting tickets, and canceling and getting tickets, and she did a tremendous job. So George hooked us up with a shuttle to the Jordanian border, which was the closest exit. And I go back to my military days. It was an E&E, escape and evasion. It was, how can we get out of here as quickly and safely as possible? And Jordan was it. So for that Tuesday, we got up bright and early, and what should have been about a 4-hour trip to the airport in Armand, Jordan, ended up being about a 9.5-hour day. It was really rough. It was really tired. We had a hard time getting out of Israel. We had a more hard time getting into Jordan, and I don't know why our American passports didn't speak a little bit more to them. I got very frustrated on both ends. it was hard for me to accept. Obviously, we weren't causing any trouble. We were just trying to get out.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, as a military man, and you know the horrors of war, we're coming up on Veterans Day. Well, where do you see all this ending?
Mayor, I'm scared. The reason I'm scared is all these other coalitions that are going on, i.e. North Korea and Russia, China and Russia, North Korea. I mean, and then you've got Iran or Iran. A lot of those countries are kind of rattling their swords and stuff. And, you know, in the back of my mind, it could easily be another World War III or something, which just really bothers me. I don't know how. I think Israel can handle Gaza. It can handle, that's just a 14-mile strip. They can handle that. I'm just worried about the other people playing in this, you know, and we've also got money and assets and actually have troops in the other war, Ukraine.
Yeah.
And so it's really frustrating to me and scary.
I know from our homeland security requirements, with what comes with, you know, hosting Alabama football and everything with it, it's a scary time. And there's a lot of uncertainty, and I think we all have to be very vigilant, and certainly if you see something, say something.
Exactly. That would be the perfect thing to do. You know, it worries me about all these people we have coming into the United States, and you don't know who they are or what they are. And one of the easiest way to bring us down would be internally, and it could be small, whatever. And I know you have to worry about this each and every day.
Well, you know, you've got to keep your borders safe. You can't have just open borders. We've got to have a safe entry and legal entry into our country. That's just part of keeping us safe. And I know we don't want to get down a rabbit hole, so I'll pull us back because I do want to end on your service as a veteran. Let's talk about you as a small business owner. How did you get into the jewelry business?
Now, that's a story in itself, and I'll try to keep it really, really short. But I was in the Army in the Panama Canal. I just had we just had our son John, and came up on leave. I had lost a brother, and we came back for his funeral, and a fraternity brother of mine, Ray Thomas, had Thomas Jewelers here. Well, Ray and I played rock and roll music together in the 60s. So he said, why don't you get out of the Army and come into the jewelry business? And I said, well, I don't know anything about the jewelry business.
So you had no experience?
Zero.
Okay.
Wow. So I get back to Panama, and I'm there for about maybe a year, and come down on orders for Korea. Well, I'm a Southern boy, and I like warm weather, and just didn't feel like I wanted to go to Korea. So I'd had about, I guess, almost 6 years in the Army at that point, and I came home. We started corresponding back and forth, and Ray kind of made me an offer, so I came back home and went to jeweler school and became a bench jeweler to, you know, size rings, repair rings, and that kind of thing. And then went to work for him at the downtown store, and then we opened a couple other stores. We opened McFarland Mall, opened University Mall back in the day. So at one point in time, a gentleman by the name of Frank Bromberg Jr. made me an offer, and probably the best mentor person I ever worked for or under or with, and just a tremendous guy. And I worked for him for a couple of years and really enjoyed it at Mountain Brook in Birmingham. I'm really getting into this jewelry thing, and a diamond dealer out of New York wanted me to go on the road and sell diamonds. So I did Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Florida, a little bit of Tennessee, sold diamonds to jewelers. That gave me another perspective about the jewelry industry, and came home one Christmas in the store downtown where Paul Violin used to be, and it was another store, I'm not sure what at the time, had gone out of business. So it was basically an empty store. So I went in and asked the guy what he wanted for all the cases and the safe and whatever, and he made a number that was just ridiculous. I mean, I just wrote him a check. I said, here. And so I'm still on the road selling diamonds, and I'm in Mobile, and a Doster McMullen calls me on the phone. Doster is working for Orrin Meredith Realty at the time. He said, Poogie, you got to get all that stuff out of that building. I've got a renter for it. And I said, well, how much are you going to rent it for? He said, about $400 a month. I said, well, tell them that you already rented it, and I'll be in Monday, and I'll give. So I rented the building with all my stuff in it, and the rest is history.
Wow. Well, today Hudson Poole, I guess, officially opened, was in 1985?
Yeah, April Fool's Day of 1985.
Well, you picked a very good day to start on.
David Hudson Jr., who's my nephew, was kind of not really doing anything at the time. I think he was working a little bit for his dad or whatever. I'm still traveling on the road. So I said, well, David, I got a good opportunity to open this thing. So we did. And we stayed together, I guess, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And then he went back in the business with his dad. And then I bought him out. But I've never changed the name. And the person who named me Poogie was his mother.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we are a mile as the crow flies from DCH Regional Hospital. I know that's something, in particular, the Cancer Center, that Hudson Poole has been at the forefront of raising money for. Why is that so special to you and to Hudson Poole and your family?
For my mother and my sister, basically. And Gene Poole's been there. I had prostate cancer this last December, January, February. And, DCH in general, number one, we need a good medical center in the city of Tuscaloosa. Thank goodness that our cancer center is superior to a lot. It's really, really good.
For a community our size to have that quality of a cancer center is something it's probably one of those things we do take for granted.
Exactly. You take some people around town, I mean, like the Maccabees, Tim Harrison, I could name a dozen people, Fred Hahn, on and on and on and on and on, that just have worked and given and pushed, to make it happen. So every year we do Barbecue and Blue Jeans, which is just a fun event, and 1,000 people will come out there, and every one of them's been touched by cancer one way or another. And so the Cancer Center is near and dear to me, and I'm just excited we have it.
Well, you do more than a lot, and I'll just leave it at that. We're doing this podcast in honor of our veterans who have served our country, who have, quite frankly, so many have given of their lives just so that we could be free. You are a veteran, and I think that, most people know Poogie, the guitar player, Poogie
drummer,
Poogie the drummer, Poogie the jewelry store, Poogie the philanthropist in our community, and probably now since October 7th, Poogie is and Jamie is being part of, being called in that awful war in Israel. But what they don't know is that you're a veteran, and so not only were you a veteran, you were Special Forces. How did you progress your way into the armed services, and what made you choose to be in the Special Forces?
So I tried everywhere in the world to stay out of the Army. I graduated college December of 68 and was drafted January of 69. I think it's the only lottery I've ever won. We had the lottery. So I went to basic training, and I wasn't in ROTC. I went to basic training. I had an accident back in college with a wreck, and it busted my knee up. And I figured since Joe Namath got out on his knees, I could get out on mine. That didn't work. They took me right on. So I went to basic and AIT, and then I decided since I had a college degree, I'd go to OCS.
Yeah.
Also, that was keeping me out of Vietnam. The more schools I took, so
you're very honest about that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Vietnam was really, really. It was like I was gonna serve, but you just thought you'd fight and die, and because Vietnam was so horrible, and as any war is, I guess. But anyway, in OCS, my roommate was a 2-tour Special Forces E6, which is a staff sergeant. Soldier had been shot up pretty much, and he was such a good soldier, they sent him to OCS, almost like a combat commission. And his name was John J. Lewis. And the whole time I was at OCS, he said, if you're going to fight and die, you might as well go Airborne Special Forces. At least you'll be with double volunteer soldiers that want to do something.
Yeah.
That kind of made sense to me. I understand that once I made that decision, my fraternity here at the university started wearing black armbands because they couldn't understand why I'd want to jump out of an airplane and be a snake eater. But it's the best thing I ever did. It gave me a lot of confidence. It really, I thought I knew a lot about life when I got in the Army. I knew nothing, basically, and really glad I did. So I enjoyed it. And basically, I would have probably stayed in career, but the Korea thing just bothered me a little bit. So when I got out about 6 years active, I went Alabama National Guard, and then I went Army Reserve, ended up commanding a battalion, and 26 and a half years, and it was a great part of my life.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
It means more than you know, and we're here. We're here in this park that it's one of the great assets Para maintains and operates. I don't know if we'd be here if it wasn't for people like Leroy Maccabee.
It's right.
That you mentioned earlier, and you've got names that are engraved of those in our community who have served As a veteran, what
Lee
is,
Hallman. There's a
Oh,
lot of them
yeah.
that just Jerry Belk. There's a lot of them that
oh yeah, Jerry.
made this thing happen, and what a great thing.
Well, what to describe? The majority of us, like me, never served. Describe what Veterans Day means to you as a veteran.
Well, I got to think back. My uncle, well, all my uncles, everybody served. It just, World War II, you could walk, you got to go. And so it really struck home to me when I was in Normandy and I got to go to my uncle's grave in Normandy. And I'm sitting there looking at the thousands of people that we left over there in Europe. And what that means to me is that there's some very unselfish folks that will give up and do everything to protect the United States. And I hope we don't get too far beyond that. With all this stuff going on right now with the Palestinians and the Jewish and the bada, I worry that we're getting away from this. This land is for everybody. And we need to protect it, and we need to keep it free and democratic.
Well, I know right now that the tone and tenor of our political discourse can often seem harsh, but thank God we live in a country where we can have that tone and disagreement, and at the end of the day, you're free, and you're free to speak it.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have that if it wasn't for the millions, I guess tens of millions of people who have served this great country. And on behalf of the city, thank you for your service. I know you try to diminish it, but to all of us that have lived under the very freedom that you and tens of millions of others that have provided through the armed forces of the United States, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. And I would encourage anyone who's interested into making certain that this park continues to serve and celebrate the legacy of those that have served in the armed forces that are from here in Tuscaloosa County, please contact Para. This has been another edition of Tuscaloosa Talks.